I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'm tired.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Report. Thanks for being here on Tuesday, March 11th, 2021. I'm sorry we missed yesterday. Our folks had a producer had a family emergency, so we had to take off on the live stream yesterday. But we're back to the schedule, and I don't foresee any other reasons why I wouldn't be in the future. But anyway, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Please follow us on YouTube at John Dennis Report, and also on Facebook at John Dennis Report, at Real John Dennis on both Twitter and YouTube. Those are the handles. So we have two sets of handles, right? At Real John Dennis, and that applies to Twitter and Instagram. And then John Dennis Report applies to YouTube and Facebook. Pretty simple. Anyway, again, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I mean, I'm just looking. There's so much going on right now at the moment. I mean, there's a thing. Candace Owens tore apart Chrissy Teigen because we learned today that celebrity seeker Courtney Stodden, when she was 16, received direct messages from Chrissy Teigen telling Courtney Stodden, a 16-year-old at the time, to kill herself. And now she's out there doing an anti-bullying campaign. She's got the direct messages. She was actually publishing it, posting it for the public to see. I'll tell you what, that's just a twist. I never got the whole Chrissy Teigen thing, not my cup of tea on any level, but that's really bad. I mean, that's really bad. And then, of course, we have Michelle Obama, who Candace Owens also tore into last night. And Michelle Obama was talking about how she's afraid for her daughters to go out driving because maybe they'll be, because they're good students and nice people, but maybe they'll play their music loud and get pulled over and be mistreated because of the color of their skin. And, Michelle Obama, if you haven't figured this out yet, I mean, if I met her, I suppose I'd be cordial to her, but it would be a very brief conversation. I'd move on to the next thing because she is a one-trick pony and a vicious one at that. She has been, this is a woman who was at Princeton, and, I don't know how she got in there, because years ago, I forgot who it was. Oh, it was the late Christopher Hitchens was talking about her thesis. Now, I don't know if it was a thesis because it was an undergraduate paper. I don't know if she was doing some advanced thing. But she wrote a paper. It was like a dissertation or thesis, one of the two. You can find it online. It's posted somewhere. And I remember reading most of it. I couldn't finish it because, as Hitchens said, it was written in a language with which he was unfamiliar because it wasn't English. It was, but I looked at it and look, I mean, I did pretty well in school. I think my papers were not, sort of high level academic papers, but, I took runs at it and I tried and I got as sophisticated as I could with my academic work. But I'm sorry to say this, but her academic paper is so narcissistic and poorly written. I really think an eighth grader could have done what she did. It's embarrassingly bad, and it's about her being. The topic is what it's like being a black person at an Ivy League institution. I mean, she doesn't get the irony of any of this stuff. She just, she's so like here I am. She's got on this constant victim trip. Meanwhile, she's at Princeton. Anybody look at the acceptance rate of Princeton lately? It's like probably 7% acceptance. And this is a woman who's had nothing but privilege her whole life. And even if she didn't, to constantly remind people that you've been a victim is so unbelievably unappealing. It's like, life does not advance. We as a species don't advance by people constantly claiming victimhood. Well, how we advance and how things get better, how all of our quality of life for all of us improves, is because people overcome the obstacles that have been put in front of them, and they are sensitive about those obstacles. They're sensitive about the issues which they had to deal with and overcome, but they actually still manage to show, measurable successes. And Michelle Obama doesn't get any. All she wants to do is just be seen as a victim. Meanwhile, her husband was elected president of the United States not once, twice. And she went to Ivy League school, lives on Martha's Vineyard, like a $12 or $15 million house. Her husband's worth, $50, $80 million. I mean, she's doing okay, but yet she still wants to do this victimhood thing. It's really astonishing. Anyway, this is not what I was set up to talk about today, but I mean, I'm telling you, if you get a chance, do a search on Michelle Obama's Princeton paper, on the search engine of your choice. I used to say one in particular, but I think you should try others. But try DuckDuckGo and read that paper, as much of it as you can. It's excruciating. And then you'll see what Michelle Obama is all about. So anyway, but here's the thing that's really the reason why I'm talking a little bit about this now is because what she's doing is making things. It's not just making things worse. She's actually, it's purposeful what she's doing. On purpose, she is pushing a narrative that is demonstrably untrue. The numbers are out there. She should be well aware of those numbers. That that this narrative that black people are being targeted by the police for murder, and that they're getting murdered in droves. Someone said someone did a poll and asked people, how many unarmed black men do you think are being killed by the police every year? And the average person thought the number was in the thousands. And the truth is, it's in the single digits. And every single one of those instances gets investigated, and there's some determination whether the officer was at fault or whether there were other circumstances that led to that outcome. And so Michelle Obama almost certainly knows about it. Well, listen, if she doesn't know about it, she's responsible for what she says, and she's responsible for doing the research to support her narrative. But if she does know and she's still pushing it, that's absolutely evil. It's just a terrible thing. We're supposed to be in a post-racial America after the Obama presidency, and the Obamas are doing everything they can to heighten tensions between the races in this country. It is a despicable action, and we have so many of them. LeBron James. The fact that Michelle Obama was talking to Gayle King about this, Oprah Winfrey, of course. Anyway, it's just all infuriating, and because it has real world outcomes. I'll have to spend a whole other time. I wasn't expecting to talk about this today, but I'll have to spend a whole other episode talking about this, just because I think it's really worth it. And I hate talking about this issue, but it just keeps coming up, and there doesn't seem to be any way of avoiding it. But moving on, let's talk a little bit about Caitlyn Jenner. So my position was, and this is sort of my hopeful position about Caitlyn Jenner when she first announced that she was running. A couple things caught my attention. One, frankly, the first thing was the team that was around her. And the people who were around her, serious people, people I know who only do serious work in California Republican politics, and And there was that, and then there was also all the other assets, on her side, including name recognition, the ability to raise money, someone who actually knows how to win and knows what that takes, and is willing to put out the effort to do that. Who has succeeded in a number of different areas, including in the field of athletics, and then also in media and in social media. And hold on one second. Yeah. So, John, non-white people do suffer disproportionately at the hands of the cops. Denying it means you're a liar. So, anyway, here's another fantasist. I think it was last year in 2019, 9 unarmed black men were killed by police. Those are from Department of Justice. No, I take that back. Those Department of Justice or FBI numbers. I'll have to look at the source. But those are the numbers, 9. And every case has been looked at carefully. If you have other numbers that prove me wrong, I am happy to change my opinion. Because you see, the thing is, that's how science works. That's how fairness works. And that's how rational thought works. But until I see numbers that disprove the ones that I know, which I can pull up and post on my website, then Mr. Slevin, then you are in fact a liar who is just interested in making matters worse and escalating this ridiculous narrative. And the truth is that in absolute terms, more white people were killed by police than black people. In almost every year, that's the case. The truth is that as a per capita, black people are killed more frequently by the police than white people. That is also true. But when it goes towards deaths per incident, in other words, deaths per contact with the police, black people are killed at a far lower rate than white people. It's just that black people have more interactions with the police. Now, that's where the conversation needs to go. And this is the reason why I think this narrative is pushing. And so, Mr. Slevin, I'm going to thank you for bringing this topic up, because I feel like this whole business of BLM and the victimhood of at the hands of the police are just sacrificial animals in this circumstance at the altar of democratic failure. Because what's happened is that the Democrats have pushed a program, an agenda of tying the black community, minority communities, poor communities of almost all types, but especially minority communities, into the hands of government, that relying on government largesse. And in the process, they have destroyed, minority families, and they're in the process, incidentally, of destroying families of lower income whites at this point as well. So there's a future where whites will be doing the same things that are having the same bad outcomes that minority communities are having right now. But the failure of Democrat policies, which have driven poor minorities in particular into the hands of reliance on the government, has broken up families and led to outrageously high amounts of crime in the poor minority communities. That's the truth. And that's what the Democrats don't want you to talk about. That is exactly what's happening. And they want to push these narratives that the police are victimizing minorities, the most despicable thing that they could possibly do. But they will do anything at this point to divert your attention from the failure of Democrat policies towards poor minority communities. Okay, let's move on. As I mentioned before, we're talking about Caitlyn. Mr. Slevin wants to respond. I'll be happy to respond to him. Talking about Caitlyn. So I thought that Caitlyn had all these assets on her. Big name recognition, an ability to win, knows how to win, succeeded in a number of different spaces, including athletics and like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and in media like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and entertainment. So, but what I said was people who might remember that tweet will also, that I put out there, the one that was quoted on Fox News, was that her first interview would be critical to show whether or not She is a serious candidate, and that first interview was with Sean Hannity, a very friendly environment, and I have to say she underwhelmed because specifically she didn't seem to have a full grasp of the issues. She was more complaining, fetching about what wasn't happening, saying simplified things like, or simplistic things like, oh, we have these forest fires, we have these fires every year because of the drought. We shouldn't have that. Okay, well, what's the policy that's going to stop us from having fires in California? And she may not have said that, but this is just an example of how the perception was that she wasn't really that. She didn't have a depth when it came to dealing with policy and issues. Secondly, I also felt like, if you notice with Trump, Bill Clinton did this too. Always acted as if he was the president already. Both Clinton did it remarkably well. Trump, it's just part of his nature. He gets that part of it. Always in the right suit and the tie, and always acting as if he's in charge. Caitlyn needed to do that. Caitlyn did that. I think she'd be very difficult to beat. She didn't do that. She came across as trying to be liked too much, and I think it was a foreshadowing of what was to come. Now, in our latest interview, hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second, folks. What is this? Hold on 1 second. Sorry, folks. So that was a foreshadowing of what was going to come. So in the latest interview with Dana Bash from CNN, you hear Caitlyn just completely unraveling. Well, even before that, let's take a step back. Let's pull up that article about the amnesty. Yeah, so I mean, and here's what you started to see some weakness, and this is with her in this interview with Hannity, where she talked about her sympathy for illegals, and we have to shore up the border, but I have sympathies because these are some of the greatest people I've met, and and this and that. And maybe she's seen polling that I have not that shows that Californians are for amnesty, both Republicans and Democrats. I don't know. I think that this was a place where she could have taken a stand, where she could have said, listen, maybe she believes this, but my sense was that she doesn't really believe this, but this is kind of a poll-driven position. That's my main problem here, because my position, of course, is different. I would say that my first priority would be to work with the federal government to secure the border in California. And then once we get to it, I think that we need to start targeting, the criminal element, of which we have an enormous problem in California with criminal elements, gangs coming in from Mexico to control, parts of cities. There are parts of Los Angeles now that are completely controlled by, Central and South American gangs. And she didn't address any of those things, and she could have totally. And then, by the way, she could have said, and then down the line, if we had law-abiding citizens, once the border is secured, once we've gotten rid of the deported or jailed the criminal element from the illegal immigrant community, then maybe we could work something out from there. But we are a long way off from that path. That would have been a way to approach that issue. Right? Because you have to keep pointing out, putting the pressure on the problem, which is that the borders are open and it's driven by both parties, and it's disastrous for this country. You cannot continue to allow 2 million people a year to run across the border and to set up shop in the United States and then pretend to think that's not going to have any consequences on the fabric of the country. You just cannot do that. It doesn't make any sense. You're going to disrupt and decay the country by doing that. It's that simple. So Caitlyn decided not to go that route. She took a position that either she made up on the spot or because she felt some pressure, or it was just driven by some polling, and neither one of them made any sense. I mean, to me, it just felt like it wasn't genuine. Okay, let's move on to her other problem. Let's talk about the Dana Bash interview. Let's pull that one up. So this one was... So, by the way, when she came out with the amnesty, I've talked about Caitlyn after the Hannity interview. I said I was underwhelmed. I said that, but I reserved time to give her some space to maybe grow into it. And then she made the comment about amnesty, and at that point I tweeted that Caitlyn was done. And then this interview happened with Dana Bash, and now she's double done. And not only that, but what's interesting is that I saw a poll the other day that showed that Caitlyn is effectively tied for second or maybe in third place amongst Republicans looking to replace Newsom. And she should be dominating. She should be at the top of the polls with no questions asked. And she should be at the very top. And here is the reason why she isn't. I think, so Dana Bash asks this question: Was the election stolen in 2020? And Caitlyn, got stuck on the spot and said, no, it wasn't stolen, and we're in this post-Trump era. Even Dana Bash says, are we in the post-Trump era? Questioning whether that's actually a legitimate thing to say, which is, Dana Bash is right. We're not in a post-Trump era. The Trump presidency, the Trump presence is overwhelming and has it casting an enormous shadow. I've said this a million times over this presidency. It will cast a shadow over future presidencies. Everything that he did and how he approached the problems and the positions he took on the problems are going to stay with us for a long time. Now, Caitlyn's right in the sense that Trump isn't in the White House, but we're not in the post-Trump era. Trump is still dominating the Republican Party, driving that agenda. Trump will loom large over the 2022 elections. I've said this on our live stream before. Everyone who is in a contested race where there could be one or two or multiple Republicans in a winnable race in the United States of America is making a pilgrimage to down to Mar-a-Lago to get Donald Trump's blessing. We're not in a post-Trump era just yet. That's going to come for some time. So the fact that Caitlyn said that is, terribly naive. But the other problem is that, I'm sorry to say this. Look, call me what you want, but I am, let's just put it this way, unbelievably skeptical that Joe Biden won that election without massive irregularities, things that happened that had to be directed. Now, serious people, elected people, Washington elected people have said to me, if Trump lost that election, there's only one organization that could have coordinated all of that fraud that's out there. Fraud, incidentally, that despite what you've heard has not been actually litigated. There has been no trial over any of the substantial accusations against of fraud in the last election. This person who I've spoken to in Washington, who I'm going to talk to in a few minutes actually, said that if Trump lost, it was only one organization that could have done that, and it's Trump's fault. He deserved to lose because he had every opportunity to clean house of those organizations, and he was referring to the intelligence organizations. That if this kind of cheating happened, it was the intelligence organizations would be the only outfits that were really capable of doing it, and so he doesn't believe that he thinks that Trump lost, this high-profile Republican, and if there was cheating, that he deserved to lose for not cleaning up the problem. Okay, fine, but my position is that there's just, I'm sorry, just the outcome just makes no sense whatsoever. This is Joe Biden is an awful candidate. He was an awful candidate in his prime in 1988, and he got run out of the race. He was awful in 2008 and got run out of that race with like 1% or 2% of the vote. As Trump said rightfully, Barack Obama picked him up off the trash bin of history and put him in that spot. He's a terrible candidate. There was no enthusiasm for him. Nobody wanted him. And as strong as the anti-Trump referendum could have been, for people who make that argument, there's just no way that the support for Biden, that there were as many people who despised Trump as opposed to the depth and the breadth of the support that he enjoyed. So as an incumbent with a solid track record, I'm sorry. Anyway, so whatever the case is, it played out the way it played out. I think there were substantial irregularities, but Biden's the president. That's how you answer that question. You can, of course, condense it and make it a bit more pithy and more, more appropriate for a television interview. But for Caitlyn to just bow on that, she is gone. The support for Trump within the Republican Party in California is so strong, not universal, but very strong. I mean, I think 90% of California Republicans are solid Trump supporters, if not very strong Trump supporters. Caitlyn saying this, she is done. Done. I mean, even Faulkner, who wasn't a big Trump fan, has walked the line on that issue, walked the fine line, and hasn't insulted, Trump supporters and Trump people. And Caitlyn just did. So in any event, she's done. And one other thing too, the sense that I got from her response to CNN was she was sort of going along to get along with Dana Bash, and that is the exact wrong approach to take with these people, because it's a form of appeasement, and you just cannot appease them, because then you get consumed by them and they'll just discard you. Even when you agree with them, you should fight them. Even if Caitlyn agreed that Trump lost that election, she should have fought Dana Bash and should have said, I dislike the way that you've asked this question, as if somehow I deserve to be dismissed because I might not agree with your position. That's the way to approach that question with CNN. Fight them, even when you agree with them, fight with them, because they're on the wrong side of everything. They're on the wrong side of journalism. They're on the wrong side of defending the United States of America, and they're not on your side. So anyway, let's move on. But Caitlyn is done, and she'll still be a novelty for a little bit of time here, but I think we can stick a fork in her. We don't need to pay attention to what she says anymore, because she's not going anywhere. Okay. Moving on to the last thing, and this one I hope is not going to take too much time, but let's go ahead and pull up there's discussion. Okay, first of all, last night Tucker Carlson did a segment on Anthony Fauci that is must watch. Now, having said that, this information has been out there about Tony Fauci, Dr. Fauci, being giving the green light and actually funneling money into the Wuhan virology laboratory, where it's all but been confirmed that COVID started. But what was interesting last night was, well, listen, Tucker just does everything right. He does these things very well. He's been doing it a long time, doesn't take any prisoners. And what's more important, the imprimatur of Fox News being stamped on this story was a first. Because the story, as I said, has been floating around out there. It seemed solid all along, but now Fox News has gotten behind it, and specifically Tucker Carlson. So he said that Tony Fauci, in his position within the federal government, actually was sending funding to the Wuhan lab, and that it almost certainly was that funding that led to an out-of-control virus that got out and infected this country and the world and led to millions of deaths. Excuse me. So if you get a chance, it's a 13-minute. Interview. A segment. Certainly worthwhile watching. But on the heels of that, today, Rand Paul, who has had a number of these kinds of clashes with Tony Fauci over the last year, and I think one of the reasons why is because I know Rand well. People know I'm friends with him. Rand doesn't suffer fools. That's an understatement. He doesn't suffer fools, and he's also, of course, a doctor, and went to a prestigious medical school, and he's written technical papers, and he can handle himself on technical grounds, and specifically medical technical grounds. So if is the exchange up there, Mario?
It is.
Oh, great, thanks. So today, Rand posts has this. Okay, let's go over to the Rand exchange with Tony Fauci in the YouTube clip. Thanks. Yeah, great. Okay. So Fauci, by the way, is completely, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for a very long time. There were people who jumped on him. I'll tell you another time reason why I gave him a little latitude at the beginning of this crisis another time. But over time, it's become clear that he's got another agenda. There's something obviously wrong and odd about this guy and his whole approach and his whole agenda. So, in any event, here we have Rand Paul, and I'm sorry, the show can't go on for too much longer because I've got some calls I've got to do. But I do want to play this for a little bit. So if you just bear with me, we're going to go to about 2 minutes and 20 seconds of this, and so just stay with if you don't mind.
The pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan.
So the conversation is about where the virus came from.
Naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities. Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. Juicing up superviruses is not new. Scientists in the U.S. have long known how to mutate animal viruses to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create superviruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all
Okay. So here's the key thing. So what Rand Paul just pointed out was that it was Fauci who was supporting this gain-of-function research into virology in Wuhan. Very, very, very dangerous stuff, because if you soup up a virus, this virus that they were playing with has already had a 15% mortality rate. Imagine if they tweaked it in such a way that they lost control of it and it got loose. It could kill the world, everyone in the world. Really dangerous stuff. Fauci, despite what he says at the NIH, was funding this, and specifically was supporting this Dr. Barrick, B-A-R-I-C, who was doing the research with Dr. Xi, I think he said, in China. So listen to Fauci's response here. This is really critical, and it's the crux of this whole thing. Listen to this.
due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect.
You're entirely and completely incorrect. Now, this is why Fauci's a problem, because even he knows that's not true. It's not true. There are shades here. There are nuances. So to say entirely incorrect is total nonsense. This is why Fauci is, I'm sorry to say, a sociopath.
That the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Do they fund?
Okay, so two things. One, he said this is entirely untrue because we don't fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Okay, well, this question comes up. Are we funding gain-of-function research in the United States, which is equally dangerous here? Now, you can watch this whole 7-minute segment. Rand Paul's rather specific with him, and Fauci never answers the question because it's not gain of function. Fauci's sort of implying that we wouldn't do gain of function research, and that is a freaking lie because they're doing it in the United States. And the fact that he's playing with words and evading the question doesn't let him off the hook. They are funding gain of function specifically, directly in the United States. Now, what he also doesn't say here is we sent Dr. Barrick over there. And maybe what's happening is the NIH is funding Dr. Barrick specifically, and this is where he's playing with words again. The funding is going to Barrick, and Barrick is doing the research. So this is his plausible deniability part, in that he's saying that he's funding Barrick, but not the gain of function research. But that's all Barrick is doing over in Wuhan.
Dr. Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's?
The Wuhan Institute.
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain of function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain of function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
Okay. So this is what he's saying. He's saying that Dr. Barrick is not doing gain of function research, but if he is, he's doing it in North Carolina. Okay, which is it? Is he not doing it? Or is he doing it, but he's doing it in North Carolina? Which is true? And he's getting funding from the NIH in North Carolina as well. This is Fauci. I mean, this is heavy-duty stuff here. Fauci is a sociopath. I have been gentle on this guy, but this is sociopathy that you're witnessing right here. This is lying right in your face. Whoa, this is heavy-duty stuff. And what's important for me is that this guy is a man of science. He's a man of science who's supposed to be protecting the health of the United States, and he is lying in congressional testimony on camera, and in a way that he's kind of getting away with it. There's no investigation of Fauci yet, but that ought to be a hashtag, investigate Fauci, because what he's doing is criminal.
You don't think inserting a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function?
That is
You would
not
be in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact that people tweet that, they write about it.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to let Fauci have the last word on this. Listen to the rest of this interview yourself and listen to it as critically as you can, and understand that he is dancing around this and using Washington speak to relieve himself of any responsibility for what he has done here. But the reality is, people who commit crimes, all sorts of terrible crimes, career criminals, are unbelievably convincing. They'll look you in your face and tell you that they didn't do it in such a believable way, except if you hold on to the facts and look them back. And that's how you'll find all these nutcases that end up in prison who do terrible things, swear that they're innocent up and down, but even when the facts are staring them in the face. We have that right here with Mr. Fauci. This is Dr. Fauci. This is unbelievable what we're witnessing. This guy is responsible for the funding, most likely, that led to the Wuhan virus become coronavirus, this novel coronavirus, turning into COVID and killing millions of people. and infecting hundreds of millions of people just in the United States. And he's in charge of the policies that are supposed to relieve us from this terrible plague that he helped to inflict upon the world. We are living in the twilight zone, folks. This guy ought to be sitting in a docket being tried for what he did. And he shouldn't be in the position that he's in right now, and no one should listen to a word that he has to say. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to end today's live stream. I really want to thank you for joining us. This is critical stuff, and we have to keep pushing back and watch what happens with Fauci. This can't be let go. People have got to stay on top of this. It's going to be, I think, a lot of the independent bloggers who are out there and the independent journalists who stay on top of this. But this Fauci guy, he needs to be relieved of his duties now as this sort of health czar and COVID czar, and he really should be tried. There needs to be an investigation. Look, I could be totally wrong, but this is not right. This has the smell of a terrible crime that's been committed here. Anyway, but thanks for joining us. I want to always express my appreciation for anyone who steps in with us and people who support us as we run against Nancy Pelosi. It's John Dennis for Congress. Got to do a special John Dennis for Congress update on the campaign. Mario, let's try and schedule that in for tomorrow.
Sure thing.
And thanks, appreciate it. And then, again, please follow us. It's at Real John Dennis, at Real John Dennis on Twitter and on Instagram, and then John Dennis Report on Facebook and on YouTube. Again, have a great day. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you live on Thursday and have some other cool stuff for you on John Dennis Report on YouTube in the next day or so. Thanks. Bye now.